This past week for Syracuse was a nightmarish one. A near 30-point loss to Wake Forest on Saturday, the dismissal of Benny Williams, and a near loss to a 7-15 Louisville team. Just when you think you're ready to put it all behind, one more moment looms on the horizon. The return of Joe Girard III, a guy who gave his all to the Orange the past 4 years. And with Girard, a Tigers team hot off one of the biggest upsets of the season. A chance for a statement win at home. It's Syracuse and Clemson on Cuse Countdown, and it starts right now. Welcome into the CitrusTV studio. It's Cuse Countdown time. Caleb Nice, Ryan Bridges, and Hudson Ridley. Syracuse and Clemson clashing in the Dome as we head into the last month or so of the season. Before we get to the Orange and Tigers, we have to recap what's been a crazy week for SU. Let's start with the big piece of news coming out of the program on Tuesday. Junior forward Benny Williams dismissed from the team for reasons not known yet. It always seemed like Benny never quite got settled in his time here in Syracuse, between a suspension earlier this season to his absence now. I'm not sure if anyone could have seen this coming on the horizon, Ryan. A 4-star recruit out of IMG Academy, a top 50 high school recruit, everything just seemed to spiral.
Yeah, I mean, you remember his sophomore year, Benny had to take a personal day and missed a game then, and then you look at what happened this year. He misses a preseason game, misses the first 2 regular season games of the season, and it kind of seemed like that Wake Forest incident was kind of the last straw in all of this. Benny has just really had some struggles on the court, off the court, and he could never really find, his rhythm with this team, especially this season. He started 17 games last year, didn't start a single one this year, Hudson.
Well, if you thought Benny Williams was going to be on the team this time next year, I mean, you're insane. We knew in some way that Benny Williams was gone. We just didn't know how and how soon. And now, with these issues that are popping up after the Wake Forest game, the technical and bumping Autry, it did kind of seem time to get rid of him. Though it does kind of feel like they're almost punting on this season now, removing a little bit of that big man depth and saying, hey, Autry is doing a culture shift now. Instead of winning, let's just focus on the culture.
And that's where I was about to go, is that it feels like Adrian Autry is kind of taking command of this program. I mean, these are like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. I mean, Benny Williams is not the last guy who's going to walk into this program with a little bit of ego and, some issues off the court. This is not a thing that's going to be new for Syracuse going forward, and he can point it out to this incident with Benny Williams and say, this is what the Orange standard is right here. You don't follow the standard, you're going to end up like Benny Williams, and he's kind of making him an example for guys going forward, Caleb.
Yeah, and as much as everyone wanted to see Benny work out, it seemed like he never quite fit in here. The Orange had their first game with the absence of Benny, a 7-15 Louisville team, but throw all the records out the window. Syracuse narrowly escaped in a 94-92 win over the Cards. Major contributions from Chris Bell. He had a career-high 30 points in this one. Malik Brown was all over the stat sheet as well. Hudson, did you learn anything new about this team?
I did, in a way. I didn't necessarily learn anything new about this team and head coach Adrian Autry, but what I did learn is something that reinforces what I already believed. They're a little slow to make changes, this Orange team, because honestly, when you come into this Louisville game, I understand what they were going with playing that 2-3 zone. Louisville is not a good three-point shooting team. They shot 31% from 3 coming into the game. That's in the bottom 100 of teams in the country. So I do understand it. But on the same side, once they do start hitting threes, a lot of teams are going to hit threes against this 2-3 zone because that's the modern era. Syracuse was just too slow to adapt, and that's why it was such a close game and such a high-scoring game, right?
Yeah, I mean, they shoot 60% from the field. That looks great, but you pull down a season low, 21 rebounds. There's no coincidence, if we're just referring it back to our last topic, it's no coincidence that as soon as Benny Williams leaves, that the season low in rebounds happens. Benny Williams is 6'9". Losing him, you see it on your screen, season low in boards.
Yeah, that depth starts to become an issue more and more with the absence of Benny. Coming into Wednesday's day with Louisville, this was a stagnant Cuse offense, a group that hadn't scored over 80 points since Pitt on December 30th, so about over a month with a true offensive explosion. This was also a team that shot a tough 26% from deep against Wake Forest on Saturday, but somebody stepped into the water, moved some things around. All of a sudden, you have 94 against the Cardinals. Ryan, How do you keep that going and break the inconsistency?
Well, you're talking about like from the shooting from deep, the shooting from the floor. You got to look at the shooting from the free throw line. I mean, Syracuse ranks 212th in Division I. Just for the record, there's 351 teams in Division I college basketball. They are 212th in that category, shooting 63% from the line in the last 3 games. You can have your inconsistencies from the three-point line, from the field, from the stripe. You need to be hitting shots at least a 75% clip. That's unacceptable.
It's not just that, Ryan, but it's also once they get on the offensive end or get into the half court, there's a lack of plays being run. It kind of seems like Syracuse tries to out-talent each team that they play. For some teams, that's going to work. Louisville, it just barely worked because Louisville is another team that just tried to out-talent them. So in my opinion, it really has just been a lack of consistency running plays from Adrian Autry. He goes to Judah Mintz and he tries to make Judah Mintz make a play, but that's not how this offense can run and win ACC games. That's where the struggles come from.
Offensive struggles, but when you move on over to the other side of the ball, things aren't looking a whole lot better. The defense has looked full of holes lately as SU has allowed 80 or more points in 4 of its last 5 games, including those 92 points to a not-so-great Cardinals team. Hudson, we know they got the win in that one, but the defense has to be a little concerning.
No, it definitely is a little bit concerning, and it goes all around. It's post defense, it's guards defending, but it really comes down to a lack of hustle, a lack of morale with this team. Because when they get down, I mean, a game is over. They get down by 7 or 8 points, and we see blowouts like that happen. Or even in the Louisville game, where they're consistently in the game, making those adjustments. It's a mix of everything. Things consistently go wrong for the Syracuse team, regardless of whether or not they're in the game. Either they're not showing a lack of hustle when they're out of it, or they have an inability to make adjustments when it really matters.
I mean, Hudson, we talk about the 92 points. We're looking at the total, but if you look at just the end of the game, Syracuse, right, or I should say Louisville, has that side inbounds, right? They get the ball in. Louisville runs a pick and roll, and J.J. Starling is practically running drop coverage when the team is up 3. What is going to happen when the team is up 3? The other team is going to try to take a 3. J.J. Starling lets a good shot go off. Louisville ties the game, and then 3.8 seconds left. They inbound the ball from 94 feet away from the basket, Hudson, and they get a really good shot off. I mean, they're lucky they didn't lose this game. Those are 2 terrible defensive possessions down the stretch from the Orange.
All right, so let's go back to a game they did lose, that Wake Forest game. After that game, head coach Adrian Autry had what might have been one of the shortest press conferences in recent history, and he started off with a sincere apology.
I'd like to apologize to our fans, our university, for that performance. It's unacceptable. Won't be tolerated, won't be allowed, won't allow it.
You can just see the frustration boiling over. Since taking over as head coach, Autry has talked about the orange standard for the program and his team. They have not met that standard in several games this season. Ryan, March is right around the corner. How do you assess what Autry has done in his first year as the head man so far?
I think he's done a good job. I mean, when you say those words and you address the fans and the students and the university, you got to mean it. He said those words, and then the Benny Williams decision came. So, I mean, you could say he's standing on his word with this. I like what he's doing so far in the program, but this program is at a crossroads right now. That Benny Williams move is a big move, and you saw some players on social media, they didn't react to it the way that you would have liked to see if you're a first-year head coach. If Autry is not on the bubble this time next year, I think you could see some changes with this Orange team.
Ryan, and I do understand that because Syracuse fans are so impatient, and you said you like how he stands on business. I don't really disagree with you, but the fact that the in-game adjustments are just completely lacking, that's something he carried over from the Boeheim era. That's the same reason that Boeheim was on his way out the door and we started to see worse and worse and losing seasons. This is exactly why. He has a more talented roster right now, you could argue, than Boeheim did at the end of his career, but he's not using it to its full strengths. At this point in the season, it's not entirely his fault.
They switched back to the man-to-man. We thought that was going to be Autry's bread and butter, and they'd allow 92 points to Louisville.
The 2-3 zone, you mean?
Doing the 2-3 zone.
Yes, yes. They switch back to the zone, and that's what happens. And when they make those adjustments, they have to mean them.
Yeah. Games like Louisville, like that one, aren't going to keep you around as head coach. We'll just say that. It's our time for our first break here on Cuse Countdown. When we come back, we go into the lair and meet the Tigers. Don't go anywhere. CC back after this. Caleb Nice, Ryan Bridges, and Hudson Ridley with you. You're watching Cuse Countdown. Let's talk about another show right now, The Price is Right. At every taping, there's about 325 audience members. Just 9 of them will get called on down to play. It's a little under 3%. Now, before Tuesday, Clemson had only beaten UNC in Carolina 1 out of 61 times, meaning you would actually have a greater chance of being on The Price is Right than the Tigers finding a way to win at North Carolina. Ryan, a huge upset for Clemson, taking down number 3 UNC, a team that Syracuse actually really struggled against earlier this season.
Yeah, Clemson has had a lot of really tough games this year. They fall to Duke by 1 at Durham, so this is a tough game, and if they lose this game, you could see them outside of the bubble for the NCAA tournament, but they pull out one of their biggest wins of the year, and they really did it down low. The battle between Harrison Ingram and Armando Bacot versus Ian Shefflin and PJ Hall, Clemson won that battle. They had 9 offensive rebounds in the second half. That was the difference right there.
I mean, the Tigers have also really been playing up to their level of competition and down sometimes. They've had 4 straight games, Ryan, in single digits. They've won 2, lost 2. Now, Louisville was one of those games, but Duke, UVA, UNC, keeping it close with all of those teams, pretty impressive, to be honest with you. Caleb, honestly, at this point, I don't see a whole lot going right for Syracuse, and we'll talk about that later down the stretch. But this Clemson team, after a win like that, really impressive.
Hey, they're the real deal. But let's talk about the man in charge, Brad Brownell. His 14th year with the Tigers, standing as the all-time winningest coach in Clemson history. This season, Brownell and the Tigers spent over a month ranked in the top 25, topping at number 13. And now one more dub this year will make it 11 straight winning seasons. Hudson, this is a guy who knows how to win.
I know, he does, and honestly, at this point, I can see him running complete laps around Adrian Autry. He's a guy that's been there for a while. Autry, not a whole lot of experience. When you compare the two, the adjustments that Brad Brownell can make and that he's used to making, they blow what Autry has made out of the water.
He knows what buttons to press at the right time. It's a guy who's been to 3 NCAA tournaments, made it to a Sweet 16. And this team, like I said, they had that loss at Durham. You mentioned a 3-point loss to Georgia Tech. They lost to UVA by 1, so a lot of close games. This team could have fallen by the wayside, but they pull out a great win, and they're in a really good position going into this game against Syracuse.
Brownell can be a problem for Syracuse, but he won't be in shorts and a tank top. One guy who will be, PJ Hall, poses as a big threat to the Orange. A 6'10" threat. The senior leads the Tigers in points per game, which is second best in the ACC. Hall is also a top 10 in the conference for rebounds per game and second in block shots. Ryan, a whole lot of accolades for the South Carolina native. How big of a threat is he to a Syracuse team that allowed 43 points in the paint to Wake Forest?
I don't even want to begin to talk about it. I mean, you mentioned the 6'10" that PJ Hall has. How about 238 pounds?
6'10" and big, not just tall and lanky.
Oh, yeah, certainly. When you look at PJ Hall, he can catch the ball from all angles, Hudson. He'll go up, he'll grab it, and then he's got a ton of different moves that he can go to. You see him finish it with the left hand on your screen right there, but he can also finish with the right hand. He can cut, and he only shoots 32% from downtown, but if you leave him open, he will hit the big shot.
Exactly, he will, and this kind of harkens back to a similar player in Quentin Post, where they do a good job, Quentin Post of BC that is,
right.
They do a good job of getting him the ball in the post, but when he doesn't have that good drive into the post, he doesn't have that grit to get in, he can hit those threes from outside, and that's why he's so deadly.
Syracuse had a lot of success against Quentin Post early in the year, but in the second matchup, Quentin Post got their number. You wonder how that's going to be a preview for the game upcoming.
Exactly, and Malik Brown did a good job of guarding that, so we'll see how that translates, but honestly, at this point, we really don't know, because PJ Hall did a great job of dominating Jesse Edwards last year. Malik Brown is no Jesse Edwards in terms of size.
Very true.
Do you think about me now and then? Because I'm coming home again. Lyrics from Kanye West and maybe Joe Girard too. Saturday's game is a day SU fans have had circled on their calendars since the start of the season. The return of JG3, one of the most decorated shooters in program history, a player who deserves the love of every Cuse fan. The journey started 160 miles east from here in Glens Falls, New York. As a 5th grader, Girard won a national free throw contest, going 25 of 25 from the charity stripe, a perfect 100%. The locals nicknamed him the next Jimmer, an ode to BYU legend and fellow Glens Falls native Jimmer Fredette. A few years later, the next Jimmer was playing for the high school varsity team as an 8th grader. His junior year, he averaged 50 points a game and became the state's all-time leading scorer. At Syracuse, the guard blossomed into one of the best shooters in SU history with accolades including the third most three-pointers of any Cuse player, the second highest career free throw percentage, and a top 20 scorer in Orange history. But since his arrival on campus, it seems nobody has faced more criticism than Girard. Sometimes it was justified, other times it wasn't, but he was a player who bled Orange through and through. He was there for the Sweet 16 run where he averaged nearly 45% from the perimeter. He was there for the COVID season. He gave everything he had for 4 years. It's what made the next Jimmer become the first Girard.
So that's what Girard has done in the state of New York. Pretty legendary stuff, right? But since he's gotten down to South Carolina, he's gotten a lot better. He's arguably having one of the best seasons of his collegiate career. And I'll give you a quick spoiler. It's because of the guys around him. We freeze it right here. Joe Girard gives the ball up, but all of his defenders have to make sure that they monitor him, because if he's such a good shooter from downtown, that means you got to bump him. You got to be on him the entire game. If we run the rest of the play here, Girard isn't the primary scorer on this play. That's actually PJ Hall, because Girard sets a back screen. Hall catches, turns, and finishes. It's an easy lay-in. We look a couple possessions later in this same exact game. If we freeze it right here, look at Ishmael Leggett, looking right at Ian Shefflin and eventually to PJ Hall, who we can't see right now, but is at the bottom, and he's wide open. So when the ball gets skipped over to PJ Hall, guess who they leave open? Joe Girard right here. That's one of the reasons he's shooting 42% from downtown and helping this Clemson team to a 15-7 record at the start of the season. So that's what Clemson and Syracuse have to worry about with Girard on the court. But when it comes to him off the court, our very own Hudson Ridley caught up with a few fans in Orange Nation to get their thoughts on Girard back in the 315.
Joe Girard is a polarizing figure.
And he puts it in, and Carolina has the lead!
You know all about his play on the court, but what do people off the court really think of him? Well, we asked Syracuse students their opinions on Clemson's star guard. Got any thoughts on Joe Girard coming back to the Dome?
He's such a big Hopefully he doesn't shoot the lights out, because he probably will.
I hate him!
Coming back to the Dome. Don't care? Perfect. Perfect.
We're going to boo him, he's trash. Thank you.
We're gonna beat him. I hate Joe Girard.
It's going to be ugly. I hope somebody just dunks on so some like.
It was fun watching him the last couple of years when he was on Cuse, but we'll see.
Will you boo when he comes back?
100%.
Not knowing who he is, would you still boo him when other people boo him?
Yes.
You would boo him? No?
Well, if I knew he was on Clemson.
It's not real.
Yeah.
Birds aren't real?
Birds aren't real!
Birds aren't real?
Yeah, Joe, are you hearing this right now? Yeah, Joe, look me in the eyes. You're nothing.
Will you boo?
I will boo. I might bring a sign, honestly.
A sign? What would the sign say?
JG0. Whoa! Points he's dropping on Saturday. Let's go.
So, Joe Girard coming back, but for now, we have to say goodbye. Don't go anywhere. We're headed to court. Cuse Countdown back after the break.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did Cavs go on vacation? New York.
Welcome back to Cuse Countdown here in our Citrus TV studio. Caleb Nice with Ryan Bridges and Hudson Ridley. We're going to call it our Hall of Justice now. We're going to be playing some CC courtroom, guys. We've got our two lawyers here. They're going to be looking to make some prosecutions. I'll step in and I'll be the judge. So we're going to go straight to our first case. Ryan is coming right for SU's leading scorer, and you're going right for the jugular, calling him a fraud. What evidence do you have for that, Ryan?
I'm going to be on the prosecution team for this one. Judah Mintz, I'm trying him for fraud. Okay, listen. NBA players, they're supposed to carry their college basketball teams. And at the start of the season, we were calling Judah Mintz an NBA-level prospect. You can't say that anymore, okay? I mean, the best thing that Judah Mintz does as an offensive player is draw fouls. He's shooting 75% from the line this season. That's not going to cut a Hudson low field goal percentage. I'm not buying Judah Mintz. He's not carrying this team and being the leader that he's supposed to be right now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, someone needs to take shots on this team. And if you're going at Judah Mintz for being the only one to step up and take shots, and sometimes when guys get pretty scared to do so, you can't come at him for that. Sometimes he takes bad shots, and sometimes he's too reliant on free throws. But he's still this team's leading scorer by over 5 points per game. You can come at him all you want, but you have to understand, someone has to step up when the moment is big. Someone has to lead this team. And for now, that still is Judah Mintz. Regardless if it's leading the team to wins or not, he's still leading this team until somebody else steps up.
I'm sorry.
Judge Caleb.
I'm going to decide to defend it on this one. Look,
goodness.
Hudson's got great evidence. We talked about the off-ball movement a little bit earlier in this show. Nobody really moves around. That makes Judah Mintz have to take more shots. He's the one carrying this team. Without him, this team would just be even farther down than they seem right now.
So you understand.
I get it. Yeah. But you got a second case now, so don't worry.
Okay.
The second case, Hudson watched Malik Brown walking around campus. He dropped his wallet. Hudson, being the good guy he is, the good Samaritan, goes to pick it up, looks in it. I don't know why he looked in it, but his license wasn't Malik Brown. You say he's not who he says he is.
Yeah, you're not trying me in the courtroom for looking in that wallet. Sure, he's not what he says he is, but at the same time, this is also not who Malik Brown says he is. He's being forced into a role as an ACC center at 6'8", 220 pounds. That being said, he's not fit to be an ACC center. And I understand he had the first 5x5 game that we've seen in a million years. But at the same time, he can't compete with some of those bigger guys in the post. He's not what we've seen in previous years with Jesse Edwards and a real ACC center who has the body to compete with it. He's a power forward. That's what he is. And he's a good power forward, but he's not a center, Ryan.
I mean, look at the guys that are backing him up, Hudson. I mean, you're making my case for me. Peter Carey, Mooney Rahima. I mean, those guys combined for about, 8 minutes a game, so far this season?
And that's his fault?
Yes. So, I'm sorry. I'm the one defending Malik Brown here, okay? You got off to a different start.
Come on, guys.
It's thrown me off. I'm defending Malik Brown, especially with Benny Williams now not in the lineup. I mean, how can you blame him for what's happening right now?
All right. I'm going to cut you guys off there. Hudson, you're right. He's a power forward, but I don't think it's identity fraud because I'm going to take the side of Ryan on this one. Any other team would be identity fraud, but when you look at those guys backing him up, you're exactly right, Ryan. He is what he's supposed to be here. So let's move on to our third and final case. Ryan, you saw Justin Taylor somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. You want to bring him up on trespassing charges.
Yes. Trespassing onto the court when he shouldn't be. I'm not saying that Justin Taylor doesn't deserve some minutes on this team, but in no way should he be in the starting lineup. It's honestly the topic that we see Orange fans talking about all the time. Every single game, the starting lineup gets posted on X for Syracuse men's basketball, and people wonder why number 5 is still in the lineup. 32% from the field from Justin Taylor. I understand he's a big body out there, and with Benny Williams out now, you gotta use him in the lineup. But Justin Taylor has lost all of his confidence. We saw him in the preseason shooting over defenders, expressing himself, right? Moving off the ball. He's got no confidence now. He's had several games with 2 and 0 points.
Okay, with no Benny Williams, who's going to be out there? Really, who's going to be out there to secure those rebounds? In the starting lineup, I don't care. Who's going to be out there? Because there's nobody else but Justin Taylor that can fill that role. Sure, he's shooting poorly. Sure, maybe he should change some of the things he does up. But he hasn't been taking as many shots as he used to. And in that Wake Forest game, when he stepped up and he had a little bit of confidence, he scored 10 points in that second half.
10 points in a 28-point blowout?
I mean, I don't...
All right. I've heard enough. I'm an unbiased judge. Ryan, I gave you the last point because you were right that there's just nobody else. So now I got to side with Hudson. You had a great point, but once Benny Williams gets kicked off the team, Hudson's right. He deserves the minutes. He's not trespassing. He deserves to be on the court. Who else are you going to put out there? I love your argument, but once Benny Williams goes out the door,
not the
it's all
finest
Mr.
judge
Ridley
I've
here.
seen.
All right, well, justice has been served, so we have one last break here on CC. When we come back, we give our final predictions. Don't go anywhere. Cuse Countdown back after this.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Welcome back into the CitrusTV studio. Wrapping up Cuse Countdown, Ryan Bridges, Hudson Ridley, and Caleb Nice previewing everything you didn't need to know this weekend for Syracuse and Clemson. We've also got Valentine's Day coming up, a holiday that celebrates commitment and trust. But Ryan, if Syracuse is going to be Central New York's Valentine, they have to win back the trust of the fans. What does Syracuse need to do to restore its reputation this season?
I'm not really going to talk about W's and L's. Yes, it'd be nice if they beat North Carolina and Clemson, but they've got to restore faith in Adrian Autry. Is he the guy for the job? That's the big question going forward.
I do understand that, but it also ends with hustle. They need hustle, they need heart, and they need to play a little flashy. The only thing worse than playing bad basketball is playing boring basketball. And that's exactly what Syracuse does a lot of times. They're either sloppy or they're boring. Clean that up and they'll be fine.
All right, well, before we go, we have to give our final predictions. Hudson, who gets the W in the return of Joe Girard to Syracuse?
I mean, it's Clemson by a mile. 81-65 is my final score. And right now, I see Joe Girard going off for 19 points on 5 threes. I don't see Syracuse stopping Joe Girard at all, and especially with the fans booing him, it's only going to make him stronger, Ryan.
You talk about Joe Girard. In one of our earlier segments in the show, I talked about Ian Shefflin and P.J. Hall. Those guys are going to dominate down low against Malik Brown. Louisville guys were putting in put-back dunks. I can't even imagine what's about to happen with those two monsters down low, and I think Joe Girard has a revenge game in the Dome, going Syracuse 63, but Clemson 80.
All right, well, we mentioned that there's about a month or so left in the season before we hit March and the NCAA tournament. So Syracuse sitting on the outside of that bubble right now, but a lot of games coming up that could be huge for that tournament resume. What games are you guys watching for Syracuse need to pick up a win, Ryan?
I mean, I think starting right here, you beat Clemson at home in front of the fans. It's a feel-good win, and it helps their confidence going forward. We can't really guarantee that they're going to go into someone else's place and win, but I think getting a big win where a lot of people will be in the Dome to see Joe Girard, in turn, you get that win, you restore some faith with the fans, and I think it's a solid win going forward.
Yeah, Ryan, I completely agree with you. It's Clemson and then it's UNC. Those two wins to build some momentum would be huge. Now, are those probable? No. Are those even possible? I guess, but that's why you play the game.
No one blames them if they don't beat UNC.
No, that's true, but you need the momentum rolling, Caleb.
Yeah, and Ryan's right, too, though. It all starts this weekend with Clemson. Speaking of Clemson, I got them winning 85-68. That's going to make it a Tiger sweep for us. I have Joe Girard dropping 23 points in his homecoming. That's going to do it for Cuse Countdown. Orange and Tigers coming up on Saturday. For Hudson Ridley and Ryan Bridges, I'm Caleb Nice saying so long, and thanks for tuning in.